Well, hi. Thanks for coming to our talk. What Mark and I are going to go over is a little bit of the stuff, well, a lot in a small amount of time from a book we recently wrote called The Legacy Trap. And it's really focused on how do you as a manager and executives think about legacy software and start to do the management, the strategy, and even some of the tactics of modernizing your software so that you don't get stuck in the trap as we talk about. And, this I think is especially pertinent nowadays because there's a lot of people going through it, and especially at larger organizations, there's many applications that need some care and love, some attention to modernize them. And just briefly to introduce myself, I'm Kote. I work here at VMware on the developer advocate group. I've been here about 8 years or so, which is kind of astonishing to hear myself say. But I've been lucky that basically I talk with people at large organizations mostly who are just trying to get better at software, and I learn what works and doesn't work, and I get to kind of write it up or video it up or kind of go back and tell people about what I found. You want to introduce yourself, Mark?
Yep. Thank you. My name is Mark. I work at VMware now for 4 years within the Tenzo group as advisory. I've been doing application modernization related tasks, roles on work for over 16 years as an architect, developer, project lead, program lead, trainer. This is the topic I'm the most passionate about. So I'm really glad that you have the chance to turn all our experience and thoughts into this little ebook. We want to deep dive a little bit more today.
So, as I was starting to say at the beginning, legacy software, well, I guess the negative effects of legacy software is a very pervasive problem. Certainly, I know when Mark and I and our colleagues talk with people who are running IT and doing software, pretty much all of them are faced with this issue. And this is just from one survey where when executives were asked, like, what's up with their legacy software, you can see that a huge amount of them, a distressing amount, if I wanted to be all hyperbolic, I'd say almost 80%. But 76% of them were saying it was holding them back, right? And what is important to notice here and think about here is it's not just that like the legacy software is like distasteful from a technical standpoint or it's kind of unhygienic from an architectural standpoint, but that it's holding these organizations back from doing things, right? It's actively slowing down what the organization wants to do, whether it's a business or a government agency, whatever it is preventing them from moving forward. And since we rely on software more and more, I mean, almost completely, but maybe 76% of the time we rely on software to do pretty much everything in an organization and run it. If you're held back by the software that you have, it's a problem that needs to be addressed, which is a large part of what drew Mark and I into really writing up what organizations we talk with and what VMware Tanzu Labs has been doing for a while, which is what we're going to go over here. So first of all, it's always nice if you don't know already to start with what an idea of legacy is, right? And it might be a little like weird to kind of figure out what it is if you don't deal with software all the time, right? It can seem kind of you know, why would we have legacy software? What's the deal with that? So identifying it, there's I'll give you three definitions, two of which you can see here. I think Ann Thomas over at Gartner has a great definition here, right? And you can see that it kind of matches with what I was saying earlier that the software is no longer flexible enough, agile enough, if you will. Something about it is holding you back from evolving how you function, right? The software itself prevents you from changing because you need the software to change to go along with what you're doing. Now, there's a very clever, very technical definition from Michael Feathers back in 2000, 2001, which from the other direction, from the programmers, the kind of bottoms up perspective, does accurately diagnose what a lot of legacy software is. And that is that it's software that doesn't have tests. And this kind of gets to like what I think of my QT definition of legacy software, right? And that is I think of legacy software as software that you have to change, but you're afraid to change. And the reason you're afraid to change it is what with Feathers there went over is that you don't know if you're going to break things or not. You don't only it's not only that you don't know if you're going to break the software you're changing, but all the other software you depend on. This is especially the case with the best, as in the most magnitudous of legacy software, typically mainframe applications, where it's very hard to know exactly what is going to change because it's core to how your business is running. But with that idea of what legacy software is, right? It's holding you back from your business changing and evolving, and it's also something that you have very low confidence in testing out and changing. You're afraid to change it. I think it's also good to kind of come in with like an example of what that may be. And this is just a fictional example based on true stories. Probably at least one part of it is a true story from my life long ago, before there were phones that were waterproof. But let's imagine an insurance company called like Warm Smiles Southeast Division or something like that. We'll call it Warm Smiles Insurance. They're insuring that you have a happy life by giving you a little bit of insurance. I think there's a pun in there somewhere. But let's say that like most large insurance companies that have been around for 100 years, they want to grow their revenue by coming up with new products, right? Like there's only so many people to insure and so much you can do as far as like bringing revenue in. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's an awesome business to be in. But they want to get into like, let's call it 24-hour insurance, right? So for example, you might have just purchased some very expensive phone, and you might go to the beach, and someone like myself may or may not have sat in the beach, the ocean, for some time, and then realized about an hour later that I had my phone in my pocket, and then your phone is ruined, right? So instead, to ensure that I had a good time, I might think, well, why don't I just buy 24-hour insurance for going to the beach, right? So let's imagine you're the Warm Smiles insurance company. You're like, great, we should get into that. Now, back when I was an application developer, pretty much anything takes about 15 minutes. Now, of course, you need to go to lunch first, and you're going to have to get some coffee. But it's going to take about 15 minutes to kind of just add this new type of insurance, because it's really just a web page somewhere, right? And that's not a big deal. However, this is where the tale of legacy software comes in, right? Like you may think, with your that all we need to do is basically go look up how much insurance we can sell at the moment. We need to open up a policy for the person who wants to buy the insurance. We need to verify that they're someone we want to insure. We need to collect some payments from them. And it may seem like these are all relatively simple things to do. I mean, a sophisticated manager or executive would realize that it's not going to take just 15 minutes, but in theory, it shouldn't take that long if all of those things you need to integrate with are running kind of in top shape, right? However, what you'll typically find is that instead, your developers need to schedule a meeting with someone. They can't find the documentation for setting up a policy. And in fact, it turns out that in the policy APIs that you have, the minimum term is 6 months for insurance. So now they've got to go and they've got to modify the APIs and the backing system for the policy to enable 24-hour insurance. And also it turns out there's not a claims process for this 24-hour insurance. So you're going to go back and need to do some programming there, and also weigh that out with the people, scheduling people to go in and do their claims, and so forth and so on. And what you find is that there are so many dependencies for doing something that is seemingly simple like this. And if the software that you're using to satisfy those dependencies, if they're not written in the most kind of efficient best practices way, which they often are not because you haven't had to do that in a while, that 15 minutes is going to elongate into, 2 months, 6 months, maybe 15 months instead to do it. And by the time that time elapses, other people will have kind of jumped in and started to get into this new type of insurance business. Now, that's just an example to kind of like set an idea of how things work. We'll also go over a little bit of an example from the pharmacy industry at the end, which I think which is an actual real example, which I think is another fascinating and helpful look at it. So the magnitude of this problem is really large, right? And this is also why I think it's very important. There's, this estimate seems a little ridiculous, but let's say we even took 25% of this estimate. It would still be an astonishing, kind of believable amount of applications and services out there that are really legacy applications that need to be modernized. And this, all of this adds up to it's a very urgent problem that needs to be addressed. And because the drawbacks of it, just to kind of spell it out from the example and what I've been saying so far, is you have this amount of technical debt, a term that is actually a pretty good term to self-describing, right? It's bad debt metaphorically speaking, that you've taken on that now means it's affecting your growth. Like you're spending all your time weighed down and paying off that debt, essentially. And this leads to, not being able to update things. It often means that you don't have the knowledge and skills of how things work. It often leads to, and it started with low test coverage, but like these are the kind of attributes that you end up seeing when you've been caught down in the legacy trap. So you need to start thinking about a way to escape that, so you can actually not be held back by this legacy software. Now, just briefly, to kind of further diagnose things, right? Like, I think as you try to figure out what a solution is, it's worthwhile thinking about like how things get that way. And I think the first one we've gone over quite a bit, or at least I've gone over quite a bit, which is the fitness of the application, right? Like, it's just not in good enough shape to be easily changed, right? Like, it's brittle. These are all metaphors that I'm using to talk about programming, but it's kind of brittle. It's hard to test. It doesn't have kind of loose coupling, so it's not flexible with the way that it works. But the code is just not in good shape for that. And it also has capabilities, right? This is often how things are exposed. As I was going over with the Warm Smiles example, you don't have the capability to sell insurance that's only for 24 hours, right? These things just weren't needed before or weren't added. And there's even bigger things, like if you can remember far back enough in time when we shifted from web applications to mobile apps, that exposed all sorts of legacy software because these new capabilities drove new needs for the software, right? So the capability for a mobile app didn't exist back then. And then also what happens a lot is people have just forgotten about it. This is one of the insidious things about legacy software, is often it's software that is very successfully running your current business, right? And it's been neglected or relied on, to put it in a positive way, to run well. But because of that, year after year, because no one needs to worry about it, you start to kind of forget how it works. So that when you actually need to go in and change it, there's not much knowledge about it. People have left or moved on to other things. Or, sometimes programmers don't document things well. I know that might be shocking, but that happens quite a bit. So these are, three of the most common reasons that software goes bad. Now, we have a more exacting way that you kind of figure out how you fix those things. I mean, it's a great method that we'll get into. But these are the seven common things that you do with legacy software. This kind of started with 5 Rs. I think maybe it was Richard Watson at Gartner. I tracked this down once, but he was somehow involved in an early iteration of the Rs. And since then, like all great things in computers, it's grown only by two. So, you know, essentially what you see here is there is a gradient between doing nothing, which is always my favorite solution to most problems in life, as you would see if you did a legacy analysis of what's happening in my day to day. But sometimes it makes sense, kind of as I was just saying, to just leave it as it were because there's higher priority things to do. Sometimes it also makes sense to retire it, like you no longer actually need it, which there's an astonishing amount of software like that if you can track it down. Nowadays, you see a lot of rehosting and replatforming, which often is moving it, for example, off of a mainframe or moving it to cloud somewhere. There's also refactoring, which is it's a kind of nuanced idea, refactoring versus rewriting, but it essentially involves going in and updating and changing the code to make it more fit for the changes that you want. And rewriting can mean just doing it totally differently. And then also a pretty good option nowadays, increasingly, is sometimes what you'd used to need a custom written software for, you can just get, I don't know what the phrase is. We used to say off the shelf. I always think off the web. But you could just go sign up for a software as a service or some service that is actually doing that thing that needed to be customized. And I think this actually probably comes up in the legacy kind of management world a lot more than it does in other spaces because, again, by the nature of it being legacy software, there's a high potential that it's a decade or more old, which means in that past 10, 20 years, some organization has come around and kind of written the common application for doing that. So these are the seven things as you start to think about what do we do with all this legacy software, that you're probably going to end up doing one of these. If you discover an eighth, you should tell us and we'll update this slide. But they're kind of like the end actions that you end up with. And then I want to hand it over to Mark, and he'll start going into the great methodology that we've developed over several years working with organizations to modernize their applications.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Michael. The different strategies that you have just seen typically are just helping on the technology, on the code, on the applications themselves, and to really fully benefit from a in-depth transformation. What is really key is to have a more holistic approach to it, to not only transform the the code and the technical bit, but everything around. This is what's making the biggest and widest impact on the way companies are doing software. On To do that properly, it involves adopting and thinking at the way you company or organization is culturally doing software to adopt more practices inspired by what startup does, having a generative culture, having strong empowerment, providing psychological safety within groups working together, having a new methodology to do software, maybe the same ones leveraged by Silicon Valley startups, to focus fully on end users, on their delight when they use the application you modernize, thinking in the way you manage the new features added to your product, you prioritize on validate new things you want to add to your existing applications, but also move very quickly forward technically. So beyond the pure modernization act, so to say, transforming the existing bit of software as a real product, leveraging the greatest and latest patterns from the cloud native world, so to say. On top of this methodological layer, uh, you could leverage a wide variety of tools, providing the best possible experience for developers, making them very efficient, to avoid to build too much of boilerplate, to be fully focused on the task, being conceiving, drafting, building beautiful, efficient, to the point software rather than dealing with tickets on so on and so forth. On At the end, modernizing the applications comes always hands in hand with modernizing the infrastructure underneath, so modernizing the platform, leveraging maybe a platform that is hiring the value line of what the developers are leveraging, completely being decoupled from the underlying hyperscalers, the underlying APIs, so that no single department has to figure out again and again what is the best way to install some infrastructure bits, so to say. On If you have a look at it, it's super hard to do all those four things together, and this seem to be really a very strong on tough endeavor. For that reason, in the way we approach it, we try to just focus on a thin slice of all those different things, starting super small, making small steps, gaining speed and velocity, and then tainting the different other departments to adopt more and more of those modern development culture methodology tools on platforms. On All that starts with one thing, being to make sure on how you achieve the biggest impact in the way you modernize. The first question is why. To Not to paraphrase Simon Sinek, is figuring out basically what do we really want to achieve modernizing this one monolith that we have, that is impeding us in moving forward to implement laws, to implement new features, to gain velocity, and so on and so forth. And on the things that are here highlighted on this little picture are the one we see the most commonly, so to say. So we see a strong desire in the first discussion always to save money, which is great, but I don't know any company really blossoming and developing itself just by saving money. I don't think it's really possible. Um, there is a strong desire to better scale an application up and down to be more efficient, to also cover some bursts of requests for specific applications, getting speed in terms of development, bringing faster new features, getting more determinism, getting stability in the way the applications are deployed, leverage, um, gaining insights on having a stronger security posture from many different perspectives around the whole application lifecycle. And last but not least, from many discussions I've had during the past 2 weeks with executive, there is a strong interest in being able to better shine through the modernization work by to attract new talent. So to say, this is one of the biggest struggles I had. I had talked to a retailer 2 days ago, the head of an application development department, telling basically they want to hire 100 developers this year, but they are really struggling to do so. On basically, a lot of companies see the potential of such modernization work to adopt attractive technologies that are for which a lot of qualified developers are available on the market, and that could help themselves to differentiate themselves from the competition and provide them a leading edge business wise. So this is where everything starts. If we think at modernizing, getting out of this legacy trap, we have more or less two levels. You could have a trap, so to say, at a portfolio level where you have hundreds, thousands of applications you are really struggling to make evolve forward, finding the right strategy, one of those 5 R's for all those thousands of applications. The other dimension is when you have just one application that is massive and you are really struggling real forward. And in our little book, as well as in the few things I want to show you, we are addressing both aspects from a portfolio level. So to say, the core idea is really finding a very easy way to build for yourself a framework helping you to take the right decision about which R is matching our application, how far are we going to transform applications. Secondly, what is the target technology stack? What is the target landing zone? Is our application going to land on an infrastructure as a service platform, on a container as a service platform, or just on a platform as a service for our developers, providing the best possible experience? On where should we start out of the 2000 applications, which are maybe the 10 we are going to start with? And to do that, we found that something very similar to the Eisenhower matrix to be able to explicate the urgency trap is super efficient to classify all of those applications. So basically building something we call an impact effort matrix or a 2x2 matrix, having a look at on one side at the technical complexity to transform your applications. And on the other side, the value that you get coming from those 6S we just had on the previous slides. This is going to help you to position every single application as a dot on this 2x2 matrix and to figure out which one are the top apps to start with, because you will expect them to provide you the highest value, and at the same time, they are good picks, so to say, to start on your journey at scale. And from there on, probably like you, Kote, in the discussion I have had with customers, very often we've seen situations where whole companies and the partners are just stuck in an analysis paralysis because they were just struggling to build a plan. They were trying to apply the same method, creating this legacy trap problem to solve it. So this ends very often in having 10 months of analysis, trying to figure out what is the best possible architecture for one application, what are the best possible criteria on targets meta structure for our portfolio at a portfolio level. Instead of making a small step forward, formulating an assumption and iterating fast, we ended in something looking like a leap of faith, ending in a very terrible manner when you come with a very heavy truck on when the distance between the 2 points you are jumping are very far away. So this is to counter that. We have been collecting very concretely the different possible options when it comes to modernizing a single application, a monolith application, maybe a mainframe, maybe a Java application existing for 30 years. And we kind of visualized all those different options in this little graph where you would see on the horizontal axis, the amount of time to value to be able just to see the results, and on the other axis to get an idea of what is the real value you achieve by doing and spending those efforts doing that specific transformation. It's quite tough to find the right match. So basically, a full waterfall. The dilemma here is that a full waterfall rewrite brings a lot of value, but takes a tremendous amount of time to rewrite from scratch. At the other end of the spectrum, if you are just rehosting an application, doing a lift and shift from one platform to the other, you might have little benefits, but it's very insufficient to have to achieve all goals that typically you set yourself up on. on what we describe in our little ebook is a way in between this Swift methodology that has been invented within Pivotal, within VMware, which empowers teams to very quickly start to define a notional architecture and move on pragmatically forward, formulating assumptions, defining on an iterative manner the architecture, capturing all knowledge that is in the head that are not documented around existing applications, on moving forward with teams that are set up like in a modern startup, putting users in the middle of what they do. This is the Swift method. This is from a very high level perspective how it looks like. At the beginning, we start with the why, we start with the business case that we validate and apply a series of small methods to understand the application, to set goals and non-goals, to extract some functionality. We are some business narrative within our application. We are going to focus on just for this business narrative, build a notional architecture the way some company like Netflix, Google, Amazon, Apple, and so on and so forth, fintech companies would build those from scratch on doing small iteration, very quickly bring re-implemented part of the existing monoliths into production. On to connect back on what Cote has been teasing at the beginning, a great example of how we have been doing that is a work that have been done by some colleagues of us in our pharmacy chain who had a lot of outages for one of the most critical applications during COVID, and it impacted tremendously the customer retention, the revenues. The monolith they had was all about prescription fulfilling, and we have been rolling out this methodology I mentioned from a stage where we tried to understand or captured everything happening in the application, all events, business events within the applications, to categorize them, cluster them in different domain, leveraging event storming methodologies to then better understand which shared service could be used, design from a design perspective, how the different components are decoupled, and leverage that to then, in a second step, focus on carve out of the whole monolith, so to say, a proper thin slice focused fully on prescription fulfillment that has a few well identified business capabilities or microservices here that were at the heart of the notional architecture we drafted through this little Boris exercise. So out of this exercise, in a few days, we managed to have like the new ideal architecture of applications, modeling something everyone could understand, not only developers, but also business analysts, product owners, the management, to have a clear alignment on how the new application should look like. And so this is this methodology is really a deal breaker to go out of this legacy trap, so to say. If you are interested on want to get more details about everything we just described at a high level, as well at the portfolio level, about building the business case at the application level, in this little ebook, Cote and I consolidated, you will find really the wisdom we have been collecting over the past 15, 16 years, also coming from a lot of insights we gained engaging with executives, with head of application development, with architects, to help you save a lot of time while modernizing your whole applications, on avoid to try to use the same methods on fall again and again in the same trap, so to say.
And
Yes.
I think the thing I would add to what Mark was saying, like as you read through that book, you'll get kind of the spirit of what we do at VMware Tanzu Labs, which is we're always attempting to be as pragmatic and practical as possible, right? Like, and so the Swiss methodology was, I think I actually wasn't there as it was being developed, but when I read through it, you can kind of tell that it was developed with the intention of like, well, let's make sure we actually do something. right? Like that we actually ship things and that we have a way of making progress rather than, as Mark was talking about, trying, assuming that we're going to be awesome enough and knowledgeable enough and skilled enough to do everything all at once. And instead, it really is a learning organization type of system where part of what you're doing is not only modernizing your software, but modernizing the way you approach doing software, the skills that you have, all of these things that Mark was going over. So you should check out that book and tell us what you think about it. And thanks for taking the time to see our talk. We'll see everyone next time.